The janitor's shift had just ended when the sound reached him, a shuffle, too light to be a worker, too desperate to be ignored. He paused, keys jingling at his hip, and tilted his head toward the side corridor. The building was nearly empty, fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead, echoing against the marble floors. Then he saw him. A boy, no older than 7, crouched against the vending machine, his arms wrapped around thin shoulders. His shoes didn't match, his jacket was torn, and his eyes had the kind of hollow look only hunger and fear carve into a child's face. The janitor dropped his mop handle to the ground with a soft clatter. He approached slowly, careful not to spook him. "Hey, buddy," he said quietly, his voice steady, calm. "It's late. You shouldn't be here alone." The boy flinched, as if expecting to be struck. He pressed tighter against the machine, his lips trembling. I don't got anywhere." Those words hit harder than any blow. The janitor crouched down close enough that the boy could see his eyes. He wasn't a man of wealth or influence, but he knew desperation when he saw it. He'd carried it himself once, long ago. "You eaten anything today?" the janitor asked. The boy shook his head, quick and silent. His stomach growled, betraying him. Without another word, the janitor dug into his own coat pocket, pulling out a folded sandwich wrapped in wax paper, his dinner. He placed it gently in the boy's lap. "Take it, it's yours." The child hesitated, then tore into it with the wild hunger of someone who hadn't tasted food in days. The janitor stood there watching, his jaw tight. He should have walked away. It wasn't his problem. But when the boy lifted his face, crumbs on his cheeks, tears mixing with relief, the janitor made the choice that would soon bring him face to face with the richest, most powerful man in town. He reached out his hand. "Come on, kid. You got somewhere now." The boy's hand was small, cold and hesitant, but he placed it in the janitor's rough palm. That single gesture bound them together in a way neither understood yet. The walk home was quiet, broken only by the scuff of worn shoes against cracked pavement. The janitor lived simply, in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. The place smelled faintly of old wood and soap, the kind of scent that came from years of scrubbing floors for a living. Inside, his daughter sat cross-legged on the couch, her homework scattered around her. She looked up, her eyes widening when she saw the stranger trailing behind her father. "Daddy?" she asked softly. The janitor gave her a small nod. "He's staying with us tonight, just for now." The girl didn't question it. She slid off the couch and padded toward the kitchen, returning with a glass of water for the boy. She handed it to him carefully, like he might break. For the first time, he smiled. That night, after the children fell asleep, his daughter in her bed, the boy curled up on the old recliner. The janitor sat at the table, staring at the bills stacked before him. He had nothing extra to give, not food, not space, not time. Yet he had taken this child in without hesitation. Something about the boy's eyes haunted him, eyes that carried a secret, and he was right to be unsettled. Because while the janitor wrestled with quiet doubts in the small hours of the night, word was already spreading across town. A vagrant child had been spotted near the corporate towers, and someone had seen him with the janitor. By morning, the whispers had reached the office of the richest man in town. A man who claimed the boy wasn't just a stray, but his property. The next morning, the janitor reported for work at the towering glass building that seemed to scrape the sky. He kept his head low, mop in hand, as he always did. He preferred invisibility. Life was simpler that way, but today, the building seemed different. The security guards were tighter, their radios crackling. Something was brewing. It didn't take long. "Mr. Turner," a voice barked across the lobby. The janitor straightened slowly. No one called him by name here. He was just the janitor, the help, or nothing at all. But now, a man in a sharp black suit stood waiting, clipboard tucked beneath his arm. Behind him, 2 guards loomed. "The CEO wants to see you, now." Turner's pulse quickened. He set the mop aside, wiped his hands on his uniform, and followed. The path led upward, past marble staircases and gold-framed doors, to a floor he had never been allowed to enter. The office was vast, lined with glass walls that looked over the city. At the center sat a man with hair silvered by age, but eyes cold with power. This was Jonathan Hale, the richest man in town, and the one everyone bowed to. He didn't stand when Turner entered. He didn't smile. "I hear," Hale began, his voice smooth as steel, "that you've taken in a boy who doesn't belong to you." Turner said nothing. Hale leaned forward, fingers steepled. "That boy is mine. He has no family, no rights, no future, except the one I choose for him. And you, janitor, will hand him over." Turner's jaw tightened. He had scrubbed this man's floors for years, heard his employees whisper of the wealth he hoarded, the lives he ruined. He had no illusions about Hale's brand of ownership. The janitor's silence stretched. Finally, he spoke, quiet, steady. "He's not yours." For a moment, Hale's polished mask cracked, a flicker of fury flashing across his face. He slammed a hand against the desk, the sound echoing off the glass walls. "You have no idea who you're standing against." Turner met his gaze evenly. "I don't need to. All I know is, he has nowhere to go, so he stays with me." The room went cold. The janitor had just drawn a line in the sand against the most powerful man in town, and Jonathan Hale wasn't a man who forgave defiance. The janitor walked out of the CEO's office with every muscle wound tight. He knew what he had just done, stood up to a man who could snap lives in half with a single phone call. By the time Turner returned to the lobby, whispers were already chasing him. Executives glanced his way, secretaries ducked their heads, guards stiffened at his passing. It was as if a mark had been stamped on him, the janitor who said no. That evening, when he picked up his daughter from school, a sleek black car sat idling at the curb. The tinted window rolled down, and a woman in a grey suit leaned out. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Turner," she said calmly. "Mr. Hale doesn't lose. Return the boy, and this ends quietly. Keep him, and you'll lose more than your job." Turner didn't answer. He simply took his daughter's hand and walked on, but the threat hung over him like storm clouds. Back at the apartment, the boy was waiting by the window, shoulders tense as though he'd been listening for footsteps all day. When Turner stepped inside, the boy blurted out, "He's coming, isn't he?" Turner hesitated, then nodded. He couldn't lie. The boy shrank back, his face pale. "If he finds me, it's over. You don't know what he'll do." Turner crouched to meet the boy's eyes, his voice firm, but low. "You're safe here. I don't care who he is." That night, the janitor sat awake long after the children had drifted into uneasy sleep. The old bills still lay on the table, but now there was something more pressing than overdue rent. Jonathan Hale had money, lawyers, men who would obey every command. All Turner had was a mop, a tiny apartment, and the conviction that no child should be treated as property. The question wasn't whether Hale would come. The question was how far a single father with nothing to his name was willing to go to stop him. The storm began quietly. 2 days after Turner's defiance, he arrived at the building only to find his schedule cut in half. The supervisor avoided his eyes, muttering something about budget constraints. By the end of the week, his paycheck was nearly useless. Rent would come due soon, and the numbers didn't add up. Then came the blacklisting. Turner tried to pick up shifts at other buildings, places he'd mopped before, doors that had once been open now closed in his face. "Sorry," they all said. "We're full." But the way they shifted, the way their voices lowered, told him the truth. Jonathan Hale had already spoken to them. Back at the apartment, shadows stretched long outside the window. 2 men in dark coats started lingering near the corner. They never came close, never knocked, but their presence was constant, watching, measuring. Inside, the boy grew restless. He barely ate, barely spoke. He kept glancing at the door like he expected it to burst open at any moment. Turner's daughter noticed too, and one evening she carried her blanket to the recliner and draped it over the boy without a word. For a moment, the boy's eyes softened. Then he whispered, "Why are you helping me? You'll get hurt." Turner, overhearing from the kitchen, stepped closer. His voice was steady, though his chest ached with the weight of what he'd already lost. Because someone has to, and because I know what it feels like to be left with nowhere to go. The boy didn't reply, but the way he gripped the blanket said more than words. Meanwhile, in his office high above the city, Jonathan Hale poured himself a drink. He had crushed men with more power than Turner. Yet this janitor's stubborn refusal irked him. It wasn't just about reclaiming the boy anymore, it was about proving no one, especially someone so low, could defy him and win. The next move wouldn't be about money. It would be about fear. It happened late on a Friday night. Turner had just finished patching the loose hinge on his daughter's door when a sharp knock rattled the apartment. Not a neighbor's knock. This one was heavy, deliberate, the kind meant to remind you of who had the upper hand. He opened the door a crack. 2 men in dark coats stood in the hallway, faces blank, eyes hidden in shadow. One of them smiled without warmth. "Evening, Mr. Turner. We're here on behalf of Mr. Hale." Turner said nothing. The taller man shifted his weight, leaning just enough to peer past Turner's shoulder. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you. Our employer is offering you a chance to do the right thing. Hand the boy over. Tonight." From behind him came the faint shuffle of bare feet. Turner didn't need to look. He knew the boy was standing there, watching, waiting. He stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind him. His voice was quiet, but there was no mistaking the steel in it. "He's not leaving this apartment. Not with you. Not ever." The men exchanged a glance. One chuckled low in his throat. "You're making a mistake. Mr. Hale doesn't like delays." Turner didn't flinch. "Tell him I said no." Again. For a long moment, the hallway was thick with silence. Then the men stepped back, their smiles gone. "We'll be seeing you." When they disappeared down the stairwell, Turner re-entered the apartment. The boy was pressed against the wall, pale and trembling. Turner crouched down, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. "They'll keep trying," the boy whispered, his voice raw. "I know," Turner said, "but they'll have to get through me first." That night, Turner didn't sleep. He sat in a chair by the door, an old baseball bat across his lap, listening to every creak and groan of the building. And where across town, in his glass tower, Jonathan Hale received the report with a tight smile. The janitor wanted a fight, so a fight he would have. The following week was a war fought in silence. First came the notice on the apartment door. Failure to pay rent within 5 days will result in eviction. Turner knew he was only 3 days behind, and his landlord had always been lenient, but now the man wouldn't even answer his calls. The reason was clear. Hale had spoken to him. Then came the job. Turner arrived at the building Monday morning, only to find his ID badge deactivated. Security guards blocked the doors. The supervisor avoided his eyes, muttering, "Orders from above." Turner didn't argue. He just walked away, mop bucket handle tight in his grip, his pride burning. By Wednesday, a police cruiser idled outside the apartment. 2 officers knocked, asking questions about the boy. Did Turner know who he belonged to? Did he understand there were legal guardianship issues? Turner answered in short, firm sentences, never opening the door wide enough for them to glimpse inside. When they left, the boy sat on the couch with his fists clenched, whispering, "They'll take me. I know they will." Turner knelt in front of him, his voice low and steady. "They can try, but until the law puts something in writing, you're with me. Understand?" The boy gave a small nod, but the fear never left his eyes. That night, Turner's daughter tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, "what if we lose our home?" He pulled her close, pressing his chin against her hair. "Home isn't these walls," he said quietly. "It's us. As long as we're together, they can't take that." But when she fell asleep, Turner sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the eviction notice. He had less than 3 days. The fridge was nearly empty. His savings, almost nothing. Hale wasn't coming at him with fists. He was using something far more brutal. Slow suffocation. Yet Turner wasn't ready to break. He had endured loss before, carried scars the rich man would never see. And if Hale wanted to strip everything away, Turner would make sure he discovered something money couldn't buy. Resolve. Turner woke before dawn the next morning. The city still slept, fog hanging heavy in the alleys, but he was already moving. He left a note on the table for his daughter, gone to find work. Watch over him. He walked for hours, knocking on back doors, speaking to managers, offering his hands for anything, loading docks, diners, garages. Most turned him away politely. Others didn't bother to hide the suspicion when they asked for his last name and realized who he'd crossed. Hale's reach stretched further than Turner had guessed. By noon his stomach ached with hunger, but he pressed on. At a small auto shop on the edge of town, the owner, a wiry woman with grease-streaked arms, looked him over. "You any good with your hands?" she asked. Turner shrugged. "I know how to fix what's broken. That count?" She smirked. "Start with sweeping the floor. If you don't complain, I'll let you lift an engine tomorrow." It wasn't much. The pay was half of what he'd earned before, but Turner accepted without hesitation. When he returned home, sweaty and tired, he found both kids sitting on the floor with books spread out between them. His daughter was teaching the boy his letters, sounding them out slowly. The boy caught Turner's eye, a shy pride flickering there. "I can write my name now," he said. For the first time in days, Turner's chest loosened. "That's something no one can take from you," he said, his voice rough. But the reprieve was brief. That evening, another envelope slid under the door. This one bore Hale's crest in thick black ink. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Give up the boy, walk away, and your debts disappear. Refuse, and you'll lose everything." Turner crumpled the letter in his fist. He didn't tell the children. He only, "I fed them, tucked them in, and sat awake long after, staring at the shadows crawling across the wall." The richest man in town thought Turner could be bought, or broken. But Turner had already decided if he had to choose between his own ruin and the child's safety, he would choose ruin every time. And in that quiet vow, a different kind of strength began to grow. The knock came on a Friday afternoon. Turner opened the door to find two men in pressed suits standing beside a county official holding a clipboard. Behind them, a black car idled at the curb. "Mr. Turner," the official began, voice coldly professional, "we've received a petition regarding the child currently in your custody. Effective immediately, the boy is to be placed in protective care until proper guardianship is determined." Turner's hands clenched at his sides. "He's safe here. He's fed. He's got a roof over his head." One of the suited men, Hale's attorney no doubt, smiled thinly. "Safety is subjective. The law doesn't trust janitors to raise children that aren't theirs." Behind Turner, small footsteps shuffled. The boy had crept into the hallway clutching his notebook, the one where he'd been practicing his letters. His eyes widened as he caught the words, "protective care." Turner turned, crouching low. "Go back to the table," he said softly. "Stay with her." The boy shook his head, whispering, "Don't let them take me." Turner rose to his full height, planting himself squarely in the doorway. "You've got paperwork?" he asked the official. The man hesitated, glancing at the attorneys. "It's pending. A temporary order is in review." "Then you've got nothing," Turner said, his voice low but unyielding. "No order, no entry. You'll come back when the court says so. Not before." The standoff stretched long enough that a neighbor peeked from her window. The official, unwilling to cause a scene without authority in hand, finally muttered, "We'll be back." When the car pulled away, Turner shut the door with a heavy hand. His daughter stood in the kitchen, pale, holding her brother's hand. "Indeed tight." "They're not done," she whispered. "No," Turner admitted, sinking into the chair. His knuckles were white, his chest heavy. "They won't stop until he's back in that man's house. But I'm not giving him up." That night, Turner spread a map on the table. His finger traced the bus routes out of town, small towns no one cared about, places Hale's reach might not extend. He wasn't a man who ran from fights. But this wasn't about pride. It was about keeping a promise. If the law bent to the richest man in town, then Turner would take the children beyond the law's shadow. For the first time, the thought of leaving everything behind didn't feel like defeat. It felt like survival. Turner had packed a single bag, clothes for the boy, a few things for his daughter, and the old watch that had been his father's. The bus left at dawn. If they were on it, Hale would be nothing more than a bad memory. But as Turner zipped the bag shut, his daughter touched his arm. "Daddy," she whispered, "if we run, he'll still hurt people here. He'll just find another kid." The words struck harder than any blow Hale could throw. Turner looked at the boy, asleep on the couch, with a blanket tucked under his chin. He thought of the life he had tried to build. Quiet, small, unremarkable. Running would keep them safe, but it wouldn't stop Hale. By the time the sun rose, Turner wasn't at the bus station. He was at the courthouse. Hale was already there, smug in a navy suit, his lawyers stacked around him like armor. He barely concealed his smirk when he saw Turner walk in, the boy's hand in one of his daughter holding the other. "Brave of you to show," Hale drawled, "but foolish. This will be quick." Turner didn't answer. He didn't need to. The truth wasn't in his words. It was in the boy clinging to him, refusing to let go. When the hearing began, Hale's lawyers spoke of money, influence, and proper upbringing. They painted Turner as a janitor with no future, no means, no right to take in another man's child. Then Turner was called to speak. He rose, his hands steady on the table. "I don't have much," he admitted, "but I've got enough. Enough to feed him, enough to keep him safe, enough to teach him that people don't walk away just because it's hard." The courtroom was silent. Hale's attorneys shuffled their papers, ready to counter, but something shifted. The boy stood up, small but certain, and said in a trembling voice, "I want to stay with him." It was a moment no lawyer could erase, no fortune could buy. The judge leaned back, weighing everything. Hal, his wealth, Turner's resolve, the child's plea, and finally, with a gavel strike that echoed like thunder, he ruled in Turner's favor. Hale's face went white with fury. Turner didn't gloat. He simply pulled the children close, his quiet strength saying more than any victory speech ever could. Outside the courthouse, his daughter slipped her hand into his. "We don't have to run anymore, do we?" "No," Turner said softly. "We stand, together." The richest man in town had tried to bend the world to his will, but in the end, it was a janitor's quiet choice, a promise kept that proved stronger than money, power, or fear. And as the three of them walked home under the morning light, Turner knew one thing with absolute certainty. They weren't just surviving anymore, they were a family.